Welcome to today's deep dive, and we're going to be talking about celebrating milestones in child development.
All right.
You know, when I first saw the title of this blog post about early childhood education,
Mhm.
I kind of thought, like, yeah, we all know we should be celebrating like first steps and,
Yeah.
first words.
Right.
But as I started reading, it turns out there's actually a lot more to it than just, throwing a party or giving a high five.
Yeah, what's fascinating is that this blog post kind of reframes how we think about milestones,
Okay.
not just as like these markers of progress, but as like building blocks for a child's sense of self.
So it's not just about like an external achievement. It's about what's happening internally for the child.
Exactly.
Okay, I like
Yeah.
where this is going to break that down a little more for me.
Well, just imagine like every time you celebrate an achievement, no matter how big or small, it's like you're making a deposit in their I can do it account.
Okay.
It's not just about the praise, it's about building this foundation of confidence that helps them face future challenges, with a can-do attitude.
I like that analogy, the can-do capital.
Yeah,
So you're saying it's about more than just acknowledging they hit the milestone, but how that acknowledgement shapes their beliefs about themselves.
absolutely. And the blog breaks down development into three key areas:
Okay.
motor skills, language, and social emotional growth.
Or the big three, and just to be clear to our listeners,
Yeah,
this deep dive is for parents and caregivers
yeah.
who are already pretty familiar with those terms, so we don't have to define every single one.
Agreed.
Okay.
But what's intriguing is that even like seemingly small achievements within those areas represent like huge leaps in a child's internal processing and coordination.
You mean an example?
So like figuring out how to stack blocks
Okay.
or responding to their name. Those are big
Yeah.
neural breakthroughs.
Huge steps, even though we might not, see it happening.
Exactly. And celebrating those small wins is like acknowledging the complexity of what's happening beneath the surface.
It's like saying, hey, I see the effort you put into that.
Right.
And it's amazing. Now, the blog also argues that celebration isn't just about boosting confidence, but about building strong bonds between the child and their caregiver.
Right.
How does that work?
Think about it this way. When you're celebrating a child's achievement, you're not just acknowledging the success, you're joining in on their joy.
Okay.
And those shared moments of pride and excitement create a really powerful connection.
It's like being on the same team,
We're
reveling in the win together.
And those positive emotions that are associated with shared celebration, the high fives, the hugs,
Yeah.
leave a lasting imprint on a child's emotional memory. And it really contributes to a sense of security and trust in the relationship.
So it's not just about saying good job. It's about creating
That's
this
right.
positive emotional ecosystem around their accomplishments.
Absolutely.
Which makes me think about the blog's emphasis on creating an environment that encourages further development.
Yeah.
So it's not just reacting to milestones. It's about setting the stage for more growth.
That's a key takeaway. And the blog suggests that parents and caregivers think about how they can turn everyday moments into learning opportunities,
Okay.
like reading together, playing games, exploring nature.
So instead of thinking like milestone celebration,
Right.
it's more about weaving that learning and encouragement throughout daily life.
Exactly. And this is where the blog gets really interesting.
Okay.
It dives into the distinction between gross motor skills and fine motor skills.
Okay. Now, for any of our listeners who need a quick refresher,
Yeah.
gross motor skills are those bigger movements like walking and jumping,
Yeah.
whereas fine motor skills are about those smaller, more precise movements
Yeah.
like using crayons or buttoning a shirt.
Precisely.
Okay.
And understanding this distinction can really help parents and caregivers tailor activities to a child's developmental stage and provide the right kind of challenges and support.
So, for example, if a child is working on those fine motor skills,
Right.
you might give them puzzles or building blocks to help them practice those movements.
Exactly. And those activities in turn lay the groundwork for even more complex skills down the road.
It's all connected.
It is.
This is making me rethink how I interact with my niece.
Yeah.
It's not just about those big milestones,
Yeah.
It's about all the little nuances
The little thing.
of her development and how I can support her in those everyday moments.
And speaking of paying attention, the blog also emphasizes how tracking milestones can help parents identify areas where a child might need additional support.
Now, this is where it can get a little tricky
Yeah.
because we don't want to turn milestone tracking into, an anxiety-inducing checklist or compare kids to each other.
You're absolutely right. It's not about pressuring children to conform to some predetermined timeline.
Right.
It's about recognizing that every child develops at their own pace and in their own way.
So how do we strike that balance between tracking and respecting those differences.
It's about being observant without being obsessive. Think about it as noticing patterns in your child's development rather than rigidly comparing them to a checklist.
So if you notice your child is consistently struggling with certain things,
Yeah.
you might want to talk to a pediatrician or an occupational therapist.
Exactly. An early intervention can make a huge difference in supporting a child's development.
That makes me think about the blog's emphasis on communication. They
Yeah.
talk about creating a space where children feel safe expressing their struggles.
Absolutely.
But that starts with us as caregivers, right?
It does.
Being open to hearing them,
Active listening is key.
putting aside our own assumptions,
Yes.
and really tuning in to what the child is trying to communicate.
Verbally and non-verbally.
It's like saying, I see you, I hear you, and I'm here for you.
And that feeling of being seen and heard, that's the foundation of a strong and supportive relationship.
This has been so insightful already.
It has.
We've gone from thinking about milestones as just these big moments to understanding how they're a part of a much bigger picture of child development.
And we've just begun to scratch the surface of what it means to truly champion a child's growth.
Okay.
There's so much more to explore.
Let's keep going. Okay. So we're back and we're ready to dive even deeper into this idea of celebrating milestones.
We've been talking about how these celebrations aren't just about, outward displays of pride,
Right.
but about nurturing a child's inner sense of confidence and self-efficacy.
And how even recognizing those small wins can have a ripple effect on their development.
Yeah, what's really intriguing is how this approach to celebrating milestones can actually transform the way we think about learning and education as a whole.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. So how does this all tie back to early childhood education?
Well, think about what we're doing when we celebrate a child's achievement.
We're acknowledging their effort, their persistence, the joy of discovery.
Exactly. And those are the very foundations of a lifelong love of learning.
Okay.
By creating a positive emotional association with learning, we're really setting the stage for their future educational journey.
So it's not just about prepping them for preschool or kindergarten.
Right.
It's about cultivating that intrinsic motivation to learn and grow.
Precisely. And this blog highlights how celebrating milestones can be a powerful tool for fostering that intrinsic motivation.
Okay.
When children feel good about their accomplishments, they're more likely to embrace new challenges and persevere, through difficulties.
It's like giving them a taste of that aha moment,
Yeah.
that feeling of I did it that makes them want to keep going.
And that brings us to another fascinating point that the blog makes.
Okay.
This interconnectedness of different developmental areas.
Yeah.
We've talked about motor skills, language, and social emotional growth, but, these domains don't exist in isolation.
Right. They all kind of influence each other and build upon each other.
Exactly. For example, did you know that developing strong social emotional skills can actually support cognitive development?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So how does that work?
Well, when children learn to regulate their emotions and build positive relationships, it creates a sense of security and stability that allows them to, focus their attention and engage more deeply in learning activities.
So it's like those emotional and social skills create a foundation.
Exactly, for cognitive growth.
And it highlights how important it is to take a holistic approach to child development.
Okay.
We can't just focus on one area in isolation.
Right.
We need to support their growth across all domains.
That makes sense. But how do we put this into practice?
Yeah.
What are some tangible ways that parents and caregivers can celebrate milestones and foster this holistic development?
One simple but powerful strategy is to narrate your child's accomplishments.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, good job, describe what you see and acknowledge their effort.
So, for example, if they build a tall tower with blocks,
Right.
you might say, wow, look at that tower. You use so many blocks and you stack them so carefully. Exactly. That kind of specific feedback helps children understand the connection between their actions and the outcome.
Gotcha.
It also reinforces the value of effort and persistence.
And it goes beyond just, praising the end result.
Right.
It's about acknowledging the process and the strategies they used.
Precisely. And remember, celebrations don't have to be these grand gestures.
Okay.
Sometimes a simple high five, a shared smile, or a moment of focused attention can be just as meaningful.
It's about those little moments of connection
Yeah.
that say, I see you, I'm proud of you, and I'm here with you.
And those moments can happen anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Whether you're reading a book together, playing in the park, or simply having a conversation.
It's about finding those opportunities to weave celebration and encouragement into everyday life.
And this brings us to another important aspect of creating a supportive environment,
Okay.
the role of language and communication.
We touched on this earlier, but I'm really interested to dig a little deeper here. How can we use language to support a child's development and make those celebrations even more impactful?
One key strategy is to use descriptive language.
Okay.
When we describe what we see, what we hear, what we feel, we're helping children develop their own vocabulary and understanding of the world around them.
So instead of just saying, that's a pretty flower,
Right.
we might say, look at that flower. It has bright red petals and a long green stem. It smells so sweet.
Exactly. That kind of rich language input helps children build connections between words and concepts.
Okay.
It also expands their ability to express themselves.
So when children feel confident in their ability to communicate,
Yeah.
they're more likely to engage in conversations, ask questions, and share their thoughts and feelings.
Precisely. And that open communication is essential for building strong relationships and fostering a sense of trust and understanding.
Creates a space where they feel safe to express themselves,
Yes,
to take risks,
absolutely.
and learn from their mistakes.
And remember, communication is a two-way street. It's not just about talking to children.
Yeah,
It's about listening to them as well.
really tuning in to what they're saying,
Right.
both verbally and non-verbally.
Trying to understand their perspective.
Putting aside our own agendas and judgments,
Absolutely.
and just being present with them.
Being in the moment.
That reminds me of a point the blog makes about the importance of observation.
Yes.
It's not just about watching for those big milestones.
Right.
It's about paying attention to the subtle nuances of a child's behavior and development.
Exactly. When we observe children closely, we gain valuable insights into their strengths, their interests, and their challenges.
And that knowledge allows us to tailor our interactions and support their individual needs.
In a more meaningful way.
It's like we're becoming detectives,
Right.
piecing together clues about who they are and how they learn best.
I love that analogy.
It shifts our perspective from simply checking off milestones to truly understanding each child's unique journey.
And that understanding is the foundation for creating a truly supportive and enriching environment where children can thrive.
This conversation has been so enlightening. We've gone from celebrating milestones to fostering a love of learning,
Yeah.
but recognizing the interconnectedness of development and the power of communication.
It's complex.
It's a lot.
It is.
It's clear that this is like a multifaceted and nuanced topic.
And we've only just begun to explore its depths.
Right.
There's so much more to learn and discover about how we can support children's growth and development in really meaningful ways.
Well, luckily, we have a whole other part of this deep dive to go.
We do.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I'm sure there are even more gems of wisdom waiting to be unearthed.
I agree. And I'm excited to continue this exploration with you and our listeners.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into celebrating milestones. And, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about how easy it is to get caught up in the race of child development.
It's true. We live in a culture that often values speed and achievement, above all else.
And it's easy to internalize those messages, like start comparing our kids to others and worrying if they're not hitting milestones on time.
Right. That comparison trap can be so detrimental both for parents and for children.
Yeah,
It creates unnecessary stress and pressure
for sure.
and can even undermine a child's intrinsic motivation.
So how do we break free from that comparison mindset
Yeah.
and embrace a more individualized approach to child development?
Well, the blog offers a really helpful reframing.
Okay.
It suggests we shift our focus from viewing milestones as destinations to seeing them as stepping stones on a lifelong journey.
I like that analogy.
It takes the pressure off
Yeah.
of reaching specific points at specific times,
Right?
and instead emphasizes the process of growth and discovery.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that every child's journey is unique.
Yeah.
There's no one right path or timeline.
And by letting go of those rigid expectations, we can create space for children to explore their own interests, develop their strengths, and learn at their own pace.
Which brings us to a crucial point that the blog emphasizes.
Okay.
The importance of allowing children to struggle.
Now that might sound a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like we naturally want to protect children from difficulty.
Right.
But you're saying there's value in letting them grapple with challenges.
Absolutely. When children are allowed to struggle, they develop resilience, problem-solving skills, and a sense of agency.
So it's like we're giving them the opportunity to build those can-do muscles we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And when they overcome a challenge on their own, the sense of accomplishment is that much greater.
Of course, we don't want to throw them in the deep end with no support.
Right.
It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between challenge and support.
Precisely. We can provide guidance, offer encouragement, and help them break down tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
But ultimately, it's about giving them the space to figure things out for themselves.
And to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Because mistakes are not failures,
Mm.
they're valuable learning opportunities.
This makes me think about the role of praise.
Yeah.
We've talked about the power of celebrating achievements.
Right.
But how do we praise in a way that encourages effort and perseverance rather than just focusing on the outcome?
The blog suggests shifting our focus from praising traits to praising process.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you're so smart,
Yeah.
we might say, I'm impressed by how hard you worked on that puzzle.
So it's about acknowledging the effort,
Right.
the strategies they used, and
Exactly.
the progress they made.
And by praising process, we're reinforcing the idea that learning is a journey,
Right.
not a destination.
We're teaching them that it's okay to make mistakes,
Absolutely.
to try different approaches, and to keep learning and growing.
And that mindset is essential for lifelong success, both in and out of the classroom.
This conversation has really expanded my understanding of what it means to support a child's development.
Yeah.
It's not just about hitting milestones, it's about creating a culture of learning, curiosity, and resilience.
And it's about recognizing that every child is unique,
Right.
with their own strengths, interests, and pace of development.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will carry with them?
I hope they'll remember that celebrating milestones is not about perfection or comparison.
Okay.
It's about joy, connection, and the incredible journey of watching a child grow and thrive.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll bring this episode of The Deep Dive to a close. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of child development. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and inspiration for supporting the children in your lives.
And remember, every step, no matter how small, is worth celebrating. Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep celebrating those milestones.